attending by Zoom today, so we have everybody in attendance except Councillor Thiessen, I believe. And so we will start with a report from our director, Mr. Miller.
All right, thanks, Chair Blackburn. So I'll start off with the Community Knowledge Campus, and just an update to committee that due to the provincial restrictions at the Ckc Centre and the Eastlink Centre both closed on December 13th. But the Hat Trick Grill and the Collision Reporting Centre, La Valley Physiotherapy and Gymnics Kinder Gym have remained operational as permitted within the restrictions. And then for the Eastlink Centre memberships through the Perfect Mind software, the staff processed a bulk freeze to active memberships and scheduled payments and disabled online access to all CKC memberships and services until we see what the province does with restrictions. And then a mass email function was used through Perfect Minds to send out a message of gratitude and details, more specifics to members through about the closure, just so they're kept up to date. And then some good news in mid-January, our 2021 capital fitness equipment is estimated to arrive, and it'll be good for members when they can get back into the gym. And then we'll put the existing equipment on Gov Deals shortly after. And then with events and entertainment, also due to the provincial restrictions, Rev Place and the MCC also were closed to the general public. But the GP Library is providing curbside and online services. And Day Bar as well has closed, other than Stepping Stones Daycare is continuing to operate there. And then an update with Rev Place, the new board system RFP was awarded to Global Sport Resources, which is a company from Leduc. So design and production will begin in the new year, and installation is slated for the summer of 2021. And the skating oval just outside City Hall is complete and open for use. And I saw yesterday they were sweeping it off, and almost every time I drive by, there's people using it. So it's a good thing for our community. And then with corporate facilities, they've been doing some work at MCC. They enclosed the exterior I-beam over the north entrance. I guess we've had pigeon gatherings happening there, and also, so this will be a good pest control measure that they've put in place. And then with the library, they're infilling the second floor south side open ledge space to reduce dust collection. With the RCMP, they're working on a scheduled replacement of boiler number 2 in the building. And then down at ERP, if you had a chance to be down there over the holidays, you'll see that we have a new reception counter. And staff say it's a lot more functional, and it's a nice addition to the building as well. And that was the money that council gave us to enhance the building a while back as well. With Fleet, it's business as usual. And then with sports development, wellness, and culture. So the museum recently received renewed recognized museum status. And that's a process that we go through. I think it's every 5 years, just to, it's an accreditation program through the Alberta Museums Association. And then some good news, our Activity Reception Center, it will be awarded to a company by the name of Atkinson Construction. It's a Parkland County company, and costs are anticipated to fall within the budget that we do have, the $4 million, slightly less, I believe. And good news as well that I think it's 5 or 6 local subcontractors that they've got lined up, including BHVAC and electrical and a few other ones as well. So that's good to see. And then with transit, ridership on accessible transit is at about 12% of what we would normally expect for this time of the year, and conventional is at 43%, so a little bit down from the last time we reported on that. And the transit department is currently, they're going through a process where they're timing the routes, and I think part of it is anticipating the new routes or the changes we'll have to make with the hospital coming online this summer as well. And then we have smart cards are being placed or activated for the accessible transit side as well. And that should be done in the next couple months in 2021. So that's my update, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Director Miller? Mayor Clayton. and then Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you, Chair Blackburn. Director Miller, I was wondering if you could give me a bit more information on the plan per se for outdoor skating. Assuming that you know, we can assume what we want, I guess, with sport and what's going to happen with the rest of the winter with COVID regulations. From my understanding, the Ckc Pavilion rink has been, you know, fairly active in signups. There seems to be lots of people using it. At one point, we had planned for another sheet of ice kiddie corner to Harry Balfour. I know initially it was looked at being as a hockey playing ice, and with hockey not happening right now, it didn't make sense to have hockey there, but I wondered if there was any opportunity just to have another sheet of skating ice. I know many of the neighborhood playgrounds or neighborhood ice rinks have opened up, but I wondered if we were considering opening up that as a second sheet of a public skating surface.
Thanks, Mayor Clayton. I think it has, down at ERP, it has gone quite well, and we did have staff present to make sure that we stayed within the restrictions and limited the number to 50. And over, I think it was about a 10-day period, we had over 900 people register and skate on that surface. On the other surface, I don't know if we, I know with your comments about shinny is not allowed for hockey. So last I heard, we weren't opening that one, and thought we have numerous other outdoor skating surfaces, and then we have the oval that we opened up as well, and that's not for hockey. But I think Stephanie casually just sent me an update. I'll just have a quick look if that's okay.
Sure, it's possible that it's not even needed now at the skating oval. I know that at the Ernie Radburn Pavilion that it has been very busy, so I was just curious if we had looked at that.
Yeah, I'll just, I can have 1 second here. I'll just get the numbers for you. So to date, we've had 1,465 at ERP total that registered through the program. There was a couple of days where it was closed, that we didn't have staff supervising, but it was still open for the public, but just not monitored. So there would have been more than this number as well. But if there is a need, then we'll, and if the restrictions allow it, then we'll open up the other surface as well, I'm sure.
Great, thank you.
Councillor O'Toole, you're muted.
Just a question, Arlen. Was there any idea on how long it would take to build the center?
Through the chair, so the timeline we put on it, I think the completion date is supposed to be November 15th. And in talking to Lori Gadet, she's had numerous conversations with the contractor and said they seem to be like really receptive to meeting that timeline, and she's not anticipating any problems with it right now. So, and included in the RFP was all the different ideas that council had forwarded to administration, and it's all included in the package at this time. So it's a really good news story so far.
Absolutely, it is. You bet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Director Miller? Seeing none, then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which again, Director Miller, would be the outstanding items list.
Okay. Thanks, Chair Clayton, or sorry, Chair Blackburn. And I just, an update from Lori Gadet, she must be listening in. And she said the Atkinson construction said by early November, they're anticipating to have it completed. So it's even, so there's a little bit of a buffer there for sure. For the outstanding items list, we only have 2 items, and both are on track for expected report dates. One is end of March, the other is in June. So unless there's any questions on that.
Any questions, folks?
None for me, thanks.
All right, then I'll ask for a motion to accept the outstanding items list as presented. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Chair Blackburn. Yes, I just make a motion to accept as amended.
Thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just before we close, I just wanted one more comment, if I could.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just wanted to say congratulations to Mayor Clayton on behalf of Community Services, and we're pleased to be working with her in the future, and looking forward to exciting things.
Great. Thank you, Director Miller.
Yeah. All right. The question is on the approval of the outstanding items list. Those in favor, please. And that passes. Thank you very much. And that concludes this meeting. I'm not sure who's next.
I think it's Protective and Social Services, but I'll just double check with Mr. Chris Manuel's popping up on the screen, so I'm sure that's it. So I guess we'll proceed with Protective and Social Services Committee meeting. Thanks for chairing that, Councillor Blackburn. So on this committee is myself, Councillor Friesen, Councillors O'Toole, and Mayor Clayton. So we'll start off with our Director verbal update with Director Manuel, please.
Okay, good morning and Happy New Year. For Protective and Social Services, we have the following updates. So Community Social Development, their staff remain involved in continuing to support our COVID hotel isolation site and oversight of our provincial budgets related to our response to date. We have a Passionate Heart event, which is an annual event in partnership with the FCSS departments in Northwest Alberta to recognize excellence in social services. The deadline to submit nominations is January 22nd, and some more information about that can be found on the city website. The Opioid Task Force will commence meeting again on January 11th, and meetings will continue to be held quarterly at that point. Enforcement Services reports that, well, actually both Enforcement Services and the Fire Department are going to be spending January and February meeting all their mandatory training requirements, and these are often legislated things that they have to do. So this is kind of a little bit of a lull in their operational seasons. So it's an opportunity to get everybody caught up in the training that they have to do. Additionally, Fire indicates that they're performing a great deal of maintenance and testing on their various equipment and apparatus just to ensure their longevity and operational capabilities. And the RCMP actually report a number of very significant events over the course of the Christmas break. However, most of those have already been publicly released via media release. And I'll send a summary of those forward to committee for your review. However, I will highlight that in December, emphasis is placed on impaired driving initiatives, and the Grande Prairie detachment indicated that they did several impaired driving check stops, and as a result of those, unfortunately, 6 impaired drivers were charged and 2 warnings issued. However, in comparison to previous years, these are actually really good numbers, significant decline. However, that's probably directly related to the limited social gatherings that have occurred over that period of time too. So although it's unfortunate we couldn't have those social gatherings, I guess a fringe benefit was there was a reduction in impaired driving over that period of time. And in summary, one thing I do want to highlight is just an expression of deep thanks to all of our shelter and outreach workers who, over particularly the past month, have on a 24/7 basis and throughout the holiday season been providing exceptional work in some very challenging and difficult circumstances. So it looks as though things are starting to decline as far as some of the COVID positivity within our street engaged communities. So hopefully that takes hold and those workers get some relief. And I'm free for questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Director Manuel. Any questions for Director Manuel? Councillor O'Toole.
No questions, just a comment. On Christmas, day before Christmas Eve, I was picking up my wife and I noticed a lady that was in the dumpster, and she didn't have much for clothing on for the temperature outside, and I didn't call enforcement services, and they responded in a very short time and was looking after her. So hats off to that department, and I'm feeling very very happy that we were able to at least look after her. So thank you.
Thanks for that comment, Councillor O'Toole. Anybody else? I just wanted to ask Director Manuel, there's lots of, we've had some communication with council, but just, can you give us an update on what's happening as far as COVID tickets in the community? There's lots of speculation that there were lots of tickets going out. Can you just give us an update on what's happening with that between Bylaw and RCMP if possible?
Yeah, you certainly some of those rumors get legs behind them once in a while, but I can tell you the reality is much different than what social media would lead you to believe. So as far as our peace officers are concerned with enforcement services, to date, we haven't issued a single public health ticket related to mass gatherings or even our masking bylaw for that matter. We've had a number of complaints. Approximately half of the complaints are unfounded. The other half are substantiated, but so far compliance has been achieved with education or warnings. That being said, previously the RCMP reported, I believe last week, around 6 tickets had been issued, but I can verify that in those particular circumstances, those were COVID positive individuals that had on multiple occasions failed to comply with their quarantines. So it wasn't a matter of, a Christmas dinner, for instance.
Okay. No, thank you for that. It's nice to hear that, and I think it's important for the community to hear that as well. So, if there's no further questions, we'll move on to the outstanding item list, and I'll just ask Mr. Manuel to give us an update on that as well, please.
Certainly. As much as I like to give CAO Galante a tough time, he's achieved his correspondence with Alberta Health Services, so we can remove him from my outstanding items list, number 1130. Item 119, which is the GP Chamber of Commerce. We have a report that's going to come forward to the meeting on the 19th. So I'm going to put an expected report date of the 19th on that one. The Indigenous Liaison Worker, we're going to target a return on that one for the February, I believe, 2nd meeting. And then the other items remain on track. So I recommend that committee adopt the outstanding items list as amended.
Okay. Any comments or questions or motions arising from that? Councillor O'Toole?
I move that we accept the outstanding items list as it appears.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor O'Toole. So we'll call that all those in favor, and that passes unanimously. So with that, thank you. That'll close off the Protective and Social Services Committee, and I'm not sure who's next in the queue, but if they wouldn't mind jumping on, that would be great. Councillor Minhouse, looks like.
That's me, next one, Cooperative Service Committee meetings, and I don't know what time is 9:23. We are in myself and Councillor Frieden and O'Toole and our new mayor, Jackie Clayton. Congratulations, Jackie. And we'll start with the Director Service update from Shane Brook. Could you please update it?
Thank you, Chairman Haas. Taxation and assessment are just completing their finalizing the 2021 assessments. They're also recalculating anyone involved in the TIPS program, the tax installment plan. They're recalculating those rates, and we'll be sending new letters out mid-January. Finances, this is a busy time for them. They're just wrapping up 2020 and getting everyone set up for the 2021 budgets. Human Resources is launching standardized performance reviews, which is a goal of ours to have those implemented for employees in 2021. As you heard about, procurement has been busy, including with the Activity Reception Center. Currently, there are 5 of the 2021 capital projects on the market. We're on track with getting things out early so we can have a successful construction year. GIS and ITS, you'll notice we're doing some regularly scheduled software and hardware upgrades in the chamber. There's nothing significant, but we are some of the chamber technology is at the end of its useful life, so this is just sort of some life cycle replacements will be implemented in there shortly. Comms and Ledge Services have been working together to launch information for the 2021 general election webpage. So there's now information on the city website. There will be a promotion campaign here shortly to let the community know that this is an election year and where to get information and who to contact. Communications also launched another in the series of the Did You Know? And this one was about traffic operations and our very high-tech traffic signal program we have in the city. And that is my update here for today.
Thank you, Shane. Any question for Shane's update?
None from me.
Nothing from you?
Nothing from me.
All right, then we move into anybody else. I don't see it. The 1.2 advocacy framework, Shane, that's you too again.
Thank you, Chairman Haas. So back in September, Council directed administration to bring back an advocacy strategy for the conclusion of this term and to set up the next council to have an early discussion going in after the next election. I've decided to bring back a report that breaks this up into a couple different pieces. Today is we're looking at formalizing a mechanism for council to have some discussions about advocacy, both long-term goals and a forum to discuss some of the short-term requests that we're now seeing more common in asking for our council support. So today is really just to set out the framework of what administration will be committed to. We would then have a discussion in a workshop format, and then bring back a public report outlining what the council's priorities are today. So the intent of today is really just to set this in motion and then to come back at a later date with our public priorities for the remainder of this term. But I also thought it was important to remind her some of the successes that we have had in advancing Highway 40 twinning, some movement on getting the hospital completed, but also for this year and being able to access $15.5 million in stimulus funding. And then the success in that was that they are projects that were priorities to us, and that meant it wasn't us chasing grant dollars for things that were other levels of government's priorities, that we were able to access things that are core infrastructure or things that enhance the community. So the framework that I'm asking for approval today is for us to have a meeting in the next couple of weeks in a workshop format. The Municipal Government Act does recognize that intergovernment relations is something that can be held, the discussions can be held outside of the regular council or committee meetings. So we would ask to have that in a workshop format. Administration will bring forward some ideas, and then those will come back to a subsequent committee meeting in February. Also, we would be committed to publishing an advocacy priority document every year. We'll probably do it a bit earlier this year, but in the regular routine, we'll do it before AUMA. It's a good sequence for us to move forward. So with that, I'd ask committee to endorse the framework as proposed.
Thank you, Shane. Any question for Shane update for this one? Advocacy, if it's not, then we're looking for a motion.
Dylan had one, Councillor Breast.
Okay, go ahead, Dylan.
Thank you. Just a question for Director Bork. I'm just wondering, reporting back with advocacy priorities, what was the thinking behind 1 year cycle on reporting that instead of a 6 month or quarterly?
So 2 parts. So setting priorities should be something that are big goals that we're all driving for to achieve. That doesn't mean that we aren't looking at emerging issues. I think that's something that actually we'll see more trend and that'll come back more regularly. but that if we're setting goals and priorities, that they should be a little bit longer term horizon. But also part of the framework was for there to be a forum in the workshop to have this as a regular item every month, so that as a council, we're using that workshop format to gather intel, which is an important part of advocacy, to have a discussion outside of the public forum about strategy and tactics, and then to bring forward items to committee as they are decided and for decision. But my view is that long-term priorities there should be some time in there. That doesn't mean we're not talking about it only once a year, though.
Thank you. If I may, Councillor Minhas? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the differentiation between big advocacy priorities and the kind of emerging issues. I think that would be good for us to get more discipline on differentiating between. Just a question more for committee on a sort of related note, but there was talk about gathering intel, and I think that throughout the term, I've become more aware of how important it is to know what's actually being talked about in the legislature. And sometimes it can be hard to do, and I know earlier in our council term, I didn't appreciate as much as I maybe should have at the time, but we had a subscription to one of the services that give you a weekly update of what's going on in the ledge. It wasn't Insight into Government, but it was one of those similar newsletters. I forget which one it was particularly. That's something that I don't know why, but council doesn't receive that anymore. And I'm wondering if there'd be any interest from committee and council in investing in having council have a subscription to that again, so we can have a better idea of what our provincial government's talking about.
Yeah, that's a good one. Shane?
So I don't need a motion for that. I can take that away. There are a number of different services, so I'll bring some information back and some advice on which one to look at. But that is something I'll commit to reactivating and having a discussion about what the appropriate service is.
Thank you.
Thank you. You done, Dylan?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Huff.
Thanks, Chairman House. Just to follow up a couple of things, I kind of agree with Councillor Bessie. I appreciate the year view, but I guess for me, and I know we're just talking about a strategy, but I'd love to see it be more of a quarterly update, similar to our financial Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 updates. So I just, as far as big picture, I can agree that that's good, but I just worry if we only had an annual report in the committee, it just doesn't show that we're pushing as much. So it's just something that could be a work in progress for me, but I'd like to see it being a little bit more. I just had a question as far as, appreciate that we're doing workshops, we're going to have some time to actually strategize, but I'm just wondering if, Director Bork, if you could maybe just tell me how we integrate things like the chamber, the GPRC, the county, the MD, how do we incorporate these external user groups, I guess, into some of our advocacy strategies, or if there's been any thought around that? Or if that's something that's kind of a moving conversation that we'll see how it comes out of the first few months of meeting. I'm just curious if there's been much thought about that, or if you have a way you think we could incorporate which groups we should be talking to with local strategy.
Thank you, Chairman Haas. I think a first step here is for us as a city to decide what our priorities are, and then to look at where we can align with regional partners. We do have discussions with them at an administrative level on what our priorities are. But I would say from administration's view right now is that what we're looking for now is some direction from council about what our own strategies are, and then we can build out the tactics and from that. So I think this is a step forward, and we'll have some more discussions here in the next few months. And then now we'll have a regular forum every month for administration, be talking to council about what our advocacy strategy and priorities should be. So it's not something that will be kicked down the road. It's something that we'll be having ongoing dialogue, and we'll be able to move action items out of that.
Okay, so if I understand, so in our first meeting, if we were concerned about wanting to make sure we had a good relationship with GPRC or different external communication with groups, that would be just something we would discuss then and bring forward and potentially look at bringing them into one of these meetings. Is that kind of a longer term goal? I appreciate we have city strategies. I just want to make sure that sometimes we're advocating on some of these major players in our community that also might need our support with some advocation with the province as well, and potentially the feds. So is that, if I had an appetite for that, is that, I guess, the forum is in our first monthly meeting saying, hey, I would like us to have a conversation with GPRC, Chamber. Is that the forum for that, I guess? I'm just trying to understand the process here. I know we're at infancy, but I'm just trying to understand that process.
Yeah, Chairman Haas, administration weren't envisioning that this was a meeting for the city. There could be different separate meetings that we would have to gather insight into what they'd like to do and how we can support each other. But that at some point we need to have our own strategies and how we go out and gather allies and such is something we can have at that first workshop discussion about how we approach that.
Okay, well, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane, I have a question with the way it echo a little bit. How do we lobby to the legislative, like provincial government or something, if you have priority in the city, like a college or a chamber or a region area? Do we do lobby quarterly, go to the legislature, take few people from the council or city administration? How we haven't done this, but we, in the beginning of our term, we talk about it, but we never did any lobby to the provincial government or federal to our priority in our area, whatever the needs are. Like an example is Highway 40, that was a lobby from all regions, that was needed. Same thing with the hospital done. But in the future, like how can we do this thing to the provincial government as a advocacy?
Thanks for the question, Chairman Haas. So there are a number of tactics which we'll be happy to discuss. A trip to the legislature was planned for last year during our strategic planning, which was put off by COVID. So that is something that we do intend to do once COVID restrictions are off. But there are a number of other tactics and even discussions that we can have with provincial government. But as of right now, I don't envision a trip to the legislature until vaccinations have rolled out.
Thank you very much. So now looking for the motion for this advocacy thing. Kevin or Eunice or?
Sorry, Chairman has had a question as well, thanks.
Go ahead.
Director Bork, possibly at that meeting, or that workshop rather, we could discuss a regular schedule of meetings with stakeholders. I know it's been a little bit inconsistent over the past few years, but due to COVID and other circumstances, but it would be nice to have now that we're getting used to regular Zoom meetings, maybe that's how we approach it. But, as mentioned, groups like GPRC, the Chamber, Build, there's other associations that last term we looked at working to improve our relationships, whether it's the Home Builders Association, the Realtors Association, school boards, various stakeholders in our communities. And maybe if this sort of at the workshop, we can discuss what a regular schedule looks like. Then at least it's documented. People know when we're meeting with these stakeholder groups, and council has a level of comfort that these meetings are going to happen. So at workshop, that could be something we discuss. Thanks.
Chairman Haas, that is a good suggestion. One thing I would also ask all of council to consider are to bring forward some ideas that you think we should be discussing, and then we can have that forum of what our priorities are. Administration will be bringing forward some ideas to at least kick off that discussion of what some advocacy priorities could be for this year. But we'd also ask that council come prepared with some ideas that they have in mind that we can throw into the mix and prioritize in the remaining 10 months we have before the general election.
Thank you. Jackie, anything? No. All right. Any other question? If it's not, then please lead the motion. Eunice?
So I'll move that committee recommend council approve the advocacy framework as presented.
Motion on the table. Any questions? If not, all in favor? Thank you. Unanimously done. Now we move into 1.3 amendment to the policy 124 bylaw and council review policy. I think Arlene. Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Chair Minhas. Good morning, committee. Under the direction of the Protective and Social Services Committee, administration's prepared an amendment to the Bylaw and Council Policy Review Policy, incorporating a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens into the decision-making process to be used by the standing committees as it relates to the review and development of bylaws and policies. So this amendment recognizes the importance of establishing a higher level of awareness for diversity, equity, and inclusion across all levels of government and decision making. And it supports the ongoing goals identified in the city's municipal sustainability plan and our social sustainability framework. So the implementation of this kind of lens into this policy does support the vision of our city to build a socially sustainable future for our residents. And with that, administration is requesting, committee recommend, council approve policy 124A being an amendment to the bylaw and council policy review policy. And I am open for questions.
Thank you, Arlene. Update, any question for Arlene? Dylan?
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the work, and I appreciate us talking more about how do I get a diversity of perspectives. And maybe this is as far as we could go in a policy, but I think that more is probably needed if we actually want a diversity of perspectives. It's not enough to say, hey, we're open to all perspectives, we want to hear from them, but at some point there's actually a need to go out and actually get a wide amount of perspectives. I think a good example is our Ckc Advisory Committee right now, where if I remember correctly, there's only one woman who's on that committee. And I think that we're probably not gonna get more diverse perspectives on that if at some point we're not actually going out and asking more diverse perspectives to apply for that committee. And in every area where we've got certain demographics in our city underrepresented, I don't know if it's enough to just say, hey, we've got a policy where we want to hear from all these perspectives. There also needs to be some resource and effort put to actually recruiting those perspectives. And so maybe this is as far as we can go in a policy, and that's more of the stuff that gets worked out underneath this policy, but I think it's important to be aware of that it could be more damaging in some ways to pass a policy like this if we're not going to do the actual work of going out and recruiting those perspectives.
Arlene, you have an answer for us? A very good question.
Thank you through the chair. You're right, Councillor Bressie. This is just a stepping stone. This amendment to the bylaw and council policy review was initiated due to direction from the Protective and Social Services Committee, and it is to act as a stepping stone for council to have that conversation when they are reviewing bylaw and policy for the city.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Dylan? No? Wade?
Thanks, Chair. Similar to Councillor Bressie's, I have a hard time with these ones because it's nice having these feel-good kind of policies and statements. When I read this, I don't know how that changes how I get out of bed and do work every day as a city councillor. I don't know what lens that changes on it. I mean, I feel like we're all trying to do this already, and I guess it's putting in paper. I'm not sure how this changes anything other than we've updated the policy. So that was just similar to Councillor Bressy's comments. I'm not, I think it's a nice step, and it's good if we're looking at other steps that are going to follow this. But in reading through this one, it just feels nice to have it, but I'm not sure how it changes anything at this point. So just more of a comment, I guess, from me than anything.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? If it's not, I need the motion for committee recommended to approve for 124. Kevin, go ahead. Are you going to turn the white? Oh, there you go. can't hear you, Kevin.
Can't hear you.
Oh, there you Nothing. Can't hear, Kevin. Okay, Eunice, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I will move that committee recommend council approve policy 124A being an amendment to the bylaw and council policy review policy. And just to speak to the importance of this, the simple fact that we have defined 3 key terms that were previously undefined is really important, and those were diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Eunice. Any comments on the motion? If none, all in favor? Thank you. It's carried unanimously, and we move to outstanding items. Shane, would you please come up again? Oh.
Thank you, Chairman Haas. The item 1111 advocacy, I'm asked to leave that on the outstanding item list as I broke this up into a few different pieces. Following this, we'll set a workshop for the week of the 18th, and then I would plan to come back with a more public document to the February 16th meeting. That might be a bit optimistic, but I'd like to set that as a target. I'll leave that on with a new date. Future growth assessment is on track for the 19th meeting. Door-to-door sales, we're doing some work on the website portion, but the actual social media campaign is on track for later this spring before door-to-door sales begin again. And we've now completed 1120 with Arlene's report here today.
Thank you, Shane. Outstanding item, any question on it? None, then we need the motion. Eunice?
So moved.
Motion on the table, all in favor? Motion carried. With that, we are done with the Cooperative Service Committee meeting. And now I think, Dylan, you're going to be the longer one, and first of the year, please keep up.
Yes, thank you there, Councillor Minot. So I will call the Obstruction Economic Development Committee meeting for January 5th to order, and the members of this committee are myself, Councillor Thiessen, who's got a family thing going on today, Councillor Blackburn, and Mayor Clayton. And we will start with Director Service Area Update, Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. We'll start off with economic development and some business outreach survey that was completed prior to Christmas. Economic development began following up with businesses that were contacted as part of the Business Ambassador Program. We did a initial survey with a focus on restaurants and food service businesses. 70 businesses were contacted and 60 responded. Excuse me. A number of the challenges reported were supply chain issues, staffing, increased sanitation workload, decline in sales and customers, limitations regarding in-person dining, constant changes in the regulations and the requirements to be open as a food service business, as well as some issues with customer behaviors such as masks, social distancing, and providing safety to people within the location. Another activity that we're involved with right now is the Serving Up Knowledge speaker series with the Chamber of Commerce. Every Thursday from January 28th to March 11th, there will be sessions held for businesses that will include topics such as cybersecurity, food photography, retail and product photography, Google My Business Directory, and Facebook newsfeed optimization. As well, with some industry engagement, Manager Rebecca Lee was invited to participate in a CEO and Minister Roundtable with the Associate Minister of Natural Gas and Electricity prior to Christmas, with topics focusing on natural gas investment opportunities and petrochemical incentives. She was chosen from relatively few economic development officials in the province, so it was nice to see her being recognized for that. In energy and environment, the construction of the combined heat and power units at Eastlink Center begins today, and neighborhood residents have been advised of the construction, and construction should continue until about early April, when the project is expected to be fully commissioned and online. In engineering services, we've posted the playground replacements program request for quotes, sidewalk construction phase 1, Masquete Park Bridge tender, the 2021 trail program tender for rehabilitation, as well as the 2021 trail program design and build. So this is the new construction and the new trail linkages that we're doing as part of the grant money that we allocated in 2020. As well, we have posted the traffic signal replacements for 108th Avenue and 96th Street. And the traffic signal design request for proposals has closed. In planning and development, business licensing is working with communications and marketing to develop a marketing campaign for the new bylaw, business license bylaw that comes into effect May 1st. Starting this week, the online portal is being rolled out to those businesses that are currently licensed and or are up for renewal. The online portal will be refined and ready for new applications on May 1st. In transportation, the sign shop's working on a number of knockdowns that occurred over the holidays where people ran into signs and should have those all back up here shortly. In parks, they continue to winter pruning of mature elm trees for structured deadwood removal and clearance. Outdoor rinks are now all open except for Crystal Park, which has some challenges with leveling with some asphalt. And tobogganing hills are seeing heavy use and are being inspected on a regular basis for hazards. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Great. Thanks, Director Glavin. Are there any questions? Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. I was wondering, Director Glavin, in regards to all the construction that's going to happen this year, including trails, so traditional roads and off non-traditional roads, if there's any consideration given for a map or simple communication as people get ready for the spring and the summer, and sort of phases and staging of that. You know, as you're reading through the list, I'm sort of picturing them in my mind, and it might be, you know, very proactive of us to sort of illustrate what's going to be under construction and when, sooner than later for people. Just a consideration.
Sure, thanks, Chair Bressy. So until all the tenders close, we wouldn't be able to put everything on there because some things get deleted if we go over budget. For example, if some of the tenders come back too high, we'll take some of the roads out of the project. So every year we do use the traffic planner to put all of the road construction on. But I think it sounds like you're thinking of a map more coded with time horizons as opposed to a map that just shows everything.
Yeah, because the existing map we use, I mean, it's not as palatable as something that's just a city of Grande Prairie map, color coding, time frames, trails, roads, everything. And not to frighten people, because it might be a little frightening when you look at it at first, but just so people have a clear understanding of what we're doing and when. And I appreciate your comment that without all the tenders being completed, it's not possible yet. But even if it was adaptive, because it was an electronic, something that's easy for people to click on and see on our website or through our social media channels, I just think it would give people a clear understanding of what all the work we're doing this year.
And just as a follow-up, Chair Bressy, we'll certainly take a look at that. One of the challenges that we will have with that is just regarding how our tenders are structured, that there's a lot of flexibility for how a contractor can phase their work. So there's some things that we put into tenders to ensure that we don't have two arterial roads both going north-south shut down at the same time. For example, this year, 108th and 116th weren't shut down at the same time because we structured it that way. But a lot of the packages that we put together for tenders, the contractor gets to select what happens first unless we say specifically that this road has to happen at such and such a time, which usually there's not a lot of justification to do that, except for instance, for things like those arterial roads I discussed that we don't want to snarl traffic. But we'll certainly take a look at it.
Sorry, thank you, Director Glavin. Are there any other questions? With that, I think we can move on to item 1.2, which is boards and committee bylaw amendments. And for that, we've got Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. Today, administration recommends that committee recommend council give 3 readings to bylaw C1422A, being an amendment to the boards and committee bylaw as presented. In June 2020, City Council approved bylaw C142022, consolidating the governance of the city's boards and committees. Prior to that, in February 2019, the Economic Development Advisory Committee was initially formed with 7 public members appointed to a 2-year term, which recently concluded at the end of 2020. Over the past 2 years, the Advisory Committee has been key in the development of a number of major milestones for economic development activities, including the long-term economic development strategy, the industrial attraction strategy, the regional labor market needs assessment, and then, of course, most recently, the economic recovery effort through the creation of the Economic Recovery Subcommittee. Throughout each of these major projects, the Chamber has been at the table participating and has played a key role in the guidance and input and representing their 1,300 members, small and medium-sized businesses across the region. Through their work, the members of the committee recognize the value of having consistent representation from the Chamber, and prior to their term, made a recommendation that Council amend the terms of reference to recognize a standing position on the committee to be held specifically for representatives from the Chamber to be recommended by the Chamber Executive. The Chamber Executive has recognized that this position, if approved by Council, would likely be filled by the most immediate past president. However, they would bring forward a recommendation to Council at the same time as the public member appointment applications for Council's final consideration and approval. The proposed amendment to the boards and committee bylaw would establish an appointed position for a representative from the Grande Prairie and District Chamber of Commerce. This position is based on the recommendation of the previous committee, as it allows for greater representation of local small and medium-sized businesses and further ensures an ongoing collaborative community-based approach to economic development. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Midhoff, then Councillor Plott.
Good question. Like when we talk about the public and chamber, and are we missing the college? We take any members from college in the city?
Thank you through the chair. At this time, the recommendation from the committee was specifically to the chamber position. There hasn't been an extensive conversation around a formal position for the college at the committee. However, there has been ongoing conversation about ways to better engage them at the committee level, and something that we're looking forward to doing through our next few projects and once we get up and running with the newly appointed committee. But at this point, there hasn't been a formal recommendation regarding the college.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Yeah, I appreciate this coming forward from our committee, as I know Councillor Thies and myself are both on the Economic Development Committee, but I just am wondering on here, and maybe I'm overthinking this a little bit, but do we need to be saying it's a 1-year term? Is there anything around term on this that we need to be? I realize that the chamber is going to be appointing somebody ongoing, but are we concerned that they could appoint somebody and it could just be the same person year after year, or we just something I thought about afterwards? I know we usually appoint people for a 1-year or 2-year term. Just wasn't sure with this if it's going to be stated that this is only a 1-year term that would roll over. I just don't remember speaking about that initially at the committee, so I'm just wondering if that's something that's an oversight or if I'm just overthinking this.
Thank you through the chair. It is fully at council's discretion. So the position would be based on the recommendations of the chamber, but ultimately the term would be set by council, similar to the public member appointments set by council. Council has the full oversight as to set those terms. In terms of whether we would be seeing the same person over and over again, the chamber has indicated that it would likely be the most immediate past president, but we haven't committed them to that. So there is opportunity for council and the chamber to have that discussion if they felt it was necessary. But ultimately, the final appointment would be up to council.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure if it's a big deal. I don't see the chamber not participating, whoever they send forward. We don't really have a mechanism right now if they did send somebody forward that wasn't participating to say, hey, it's been a year, you haven't been showing up that way. So I'm just wondering if maybe a 1-year term for this position wouldn't be a bad thing. So it kind of forces the chamber to have their check-in point as well to make sure they're rolling that over. So just some thought. It's not a hill for me to die on, just something I was just thinking we might want to put a little more oversight on. Thanks a lot, Ms. Lee.
Is there any other questions? Or a committee member willing to make a motion? Councillor Blackburn. Oh, sorry, Councillor Blackburn, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'll make the motion as recommended.
Great, thank you. Any discussion or debate on the motion? In that case, call this question. All in favor? And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Lee. We appreciate it. Moving on to item 1.3, we've got an update on our autonomous mower and snowbot update on ARTI, and that is Mr. Tarrant.
Thank you, Chairman Bressie, and Happy New Year, everyone. As we reported previously, the city took possession of the autonomous mower/snowbot last December. Since then, we've had a chance to trial it on both winter and summer operations and have some pretty good knowledge with it now. So we felt it was appropriate to bring a bit of an update, let council and residents know what's been happening with it. I'm going to take the winter operations. I helped oversee those this past winter, and Amy Needham will be taking over, giving a little bit of update on the summer operations. So last winter, we were able to, we created a loop around the reservoir where we were able to have the autonomous robot, or ARTI as we affectionately call them, and created there was a 3-kilometer loop. It had to do 2 passes, so 6 kilometers of trail clearing. As you can see in the report, it was most efficient when we had dry, powdery snow that was less than 3 inches. Under those conditions, he was able to take care of it, fairly well. If you got, the wet, slushy snow, it didn't work as well. It's one of the limitations of the brush function on the units. And in terms of the autonomous capabilities of the machine, it worked quite well in terms of object detection and GPS guidance, in that it followed a path, and if there was any carts or anything that moved in front of it, it would stop instantly. So that was a success there. The challenge was sometimes those autonomous functions were too effective, and when we're going over things like bridges and narrow passageways, it would recognize there was an object, being the fence railings, or if there was a steep hill, it would recognize that there was an object in front of it as it tried to start to go up the hill. And so in those situations, it would stop. It required human intervention to come in. So there was a lot of learnings. A lot of those challenges can be overcome. It just requires some more programming and working with the manufacturer to create different pathways and whatnot to overcome the challenges. Going into this winter, given that its success with the sort of flatter areas with no obstacles, we are going to be trialing it at Ckc and trying it on the oval, the skating oval there, as well as the artificial turf field and some of the walkways, pathways along there, and trialing it to see how well we can get some efficiencies out of it on the winter operations. So that's what we'll be doing. We just need some snow. If someone can shake some sticks or something, we would love to be able to trial it a little bit more. So With that, I will turn it over to Amy, who will let you know about the summer operations.
Thank you very much, through the chair. So this summer, we housed Artie at the CKC site. The reason for that was because we didn't have a dedicated trailer to move him around, and the CKC site had somewhere secure and safe that we could store him. He wouldn't be at the mercy of anyone walking by, and they also have a lot of turf that we could trial him out on. So we wanted to try him out on a variety of different substrates, things like open sports fields, a park setting with lots of obstacles such as trees close together, beside roadways such as along Wapiti Road. We wanted to try him on a variety of slopes and see what his limitations were slope-wise. So you can see some pictures there of him running, and he did quite well on the open areas. That was definitely his forte. Areas where we had challenges, definitely slopes, not because he was going to tip, but more because he falls off of his track and he stops and he requires human intervention in order to start again. And with the park situation with a lot of obstacles close together, he had some programming issues that we're still going to explore next summer and try and get around. He ended up going off his track and taking out the side of a tree, unfortunately, the tree's chagrin. So we're going to work on some programming things next year, and there's also an idea of a rotation there. What we plan to do next summer is actually utilize Artie to provide a higher level of service on some of the higher use sports fields, because our main mowers are the Toro mowers run by operators, and it takes too long to move the decks up and down. It's time prohibitive to move the decks up and down, and so our standard mowing height is set at 3 inches on those decks, whereas if Artie can provide a 2-inch mowing height, then we can provide a higher level of service on some of the irrigated fields, as you can see below. All of this is dependent on, we're going to check in with the user groups in the spring to see what availability there is for sports happening. So it all depends on that. And that was the summer. I am open for questions.
Great, thanks for the update. Are there any questions? Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Chair Bresky. Just, I guess, more of a comment or maybe something that looking forward. I know there was, through soccer and ball, talk about, the utilization of these machines on keeping the grass cut at a certain depth level. Do we have the ability with Artie to move the deck heights around a little bit easier than some of our other equipment? So that when we go to rotary fields, we can mow the lawn and the grass to just a little bit lower scale for soccer, and I know Ball was mentioning that as well.
Yeah, through the chair. Our plan is to set his deck as low as it'll go. It looks to be about 2 to 2.25 inches at height, and then he can mow it lower for the higher use areas such as rotary fields that are used for soccer, but that are also under irrigation. A lot of the reason why we have our deck set at 3 inches is so that they don't brown off right away as soon as we don't get rain for a week. The grass starts to brown off, but in an irrigated situation such as Legion Field or Rotary Field, you do have the opportunity to provide that lower cut, so a better playing surface for things like soccer without having to worry about the grass browning off. So that's the plan.
And just, I guess, further question on that, just with only having one Artie, I guess, are we able to stay, are we able to keep up if we wanted to have a higher frequency of mowing on some of these sports fields? They're beautiful fields, but sometimes that extra cut once a week is a big difference on the quality of play. Just wondering if he has the ability to do more cuts or if we're kind of fully utilizing them now.
Yeah, I can answer that through the chair. So right now our high use sports fields are set on a weekly rotation, and that's going to be the plan for Artie, is we'll set him on a weekly rotation on the high use fields, and we'll adjust his usage time, his mobilization time, his mowing time to fit within that week-long rotation to make sure that he's cutting them every week. It does depend on things. We are weather dependent, so it does depend on things like rainfall and stuff like that, even if they are irrigated, on how fast they grow. But I am prepared to provide support with our Toro mowers in case he gets behind. Perhaps he could, we would put him onto the playing areas, make sure the playing areas were cut to the 2-inch height, and leave the peripheral areas for the Toros to clean up if we ever did get behind.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Amy. Nice to hear we got a plan on it and it's working out.
Two questions I had was, first of all, when you talk about he runs into issues and human intervention is needed, is that somebody actually having to stop what they're doing and go out on site? Or is that somebody being able to, from wherever they're working, do it over a computer or a cell phone, check the cameras and give them directions?
I can take that. Yeah, it depends on the what the issue is. Sometimes in the mowing operations, we found that it would do an object detect, and it might be that there was like maybe a large weed or something that was growing. In those situations, you can just take a look at the camera and just see if there's nothing there. You can the operator for wherever they are can just click resume, and it just continues on. So in a lot of those cases, that is the case. Some of the cases, it is if it does detect a more permanent object there, that you need human interaction to move around it or to actually program it so it's not not reading something that shouldn't be there.
Thank you. Then one other question I had was we thought that when we first got Artie, we thought that the cost recovery on him versus getting a traditional mower and the increased cost of the autonomous systems would be about 2 years once he was up and running. Is that still the estimate we think? Do we have a better idea of how long cost recovery on these units might be if we expand this fleet?
So that's really what the intent for this next summer will be, is to, so this summer was a lot of just one-off trialing, trying it on different terrains, seeing where it was most effective. This next summer, knowing that it's most effective on those large open fields, we're really trying to operationalize it, right? And if we are able to hit that weekly rotation to get our, most, our major sports fields done on that weekly basis, it's only going to require one operator who will be there. They'll be able to go there, do all the weed whacking, all the trimming and whatnot, while Artie is in operation, load them up, bring them back. If this works out as we envision it, we feel that there will be, that significant, cost reductions, in the long term. But that will be this summer. We do have some concerns with the mobilization of the unit, moving it from site to site, whether that's going to be, effective and whether the machine will be able to take it. It's not the most robust machine. So those are the things we need to really trial out and that will be able to tell us whether, there's going to be significant long-term savings, and whether we could possibly expand the program.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Could I get a motion to receive for information? Councilor Blackburn.
So moved.
Great, thank you. I call the question. All in favor? That motion carries unanimously. And thank you so much for your work on this. Really appreciate it. I think it's a great example of how we're working to deliver actually better service while spending less taxpayer money in the long term. So really appreciate the work that's being done on this. So thank you, administration. With that, we will move on to item 1.4, Stormwater Utility Request for Direction. And that is still Mr. Toronto is on the hook.
Thank you, Chairman Bressie. So the Council previously gave direction for administration to explore the implementation of a stormwater utility. In a nutshell, the request was to look at what it would take to move the funding of the stormwater operations and maintenance and capital funding from the general tax base to a separate utility that is, funded through a separate billing system. So administration has gone and looked at, several options for that, and you'll see in the report several items. At this point, if a committee would like us to fully develop the model, we have a number of questions that you can see outlined in the report that we would like direction and guidance on that will give us the ability to fully develop the model. There are the rationale for moving to stormwater utility. There's about 5 different reasons that are generally given for the municipalities that have moved this way. The number one is that it allows more consistent funding for planning of our stormwater system, being that it's not in the stormwater is not in the mix of all the other priorities for the city. There's a dedicated funding source for it, and so that it's better to for the long-term planning of that infrastructure to have that dedicated funding source that will not vary from year to year based on where provincial grants are at or where the different priorities are at the time. The second thing it does is that it attributes the cost of the service. It could, depending on the model chosen, attribute the cost of the service to the user based on how much they're benefiting from it. So if you are, have a large amount of impervious area on your land, there's the potential for you to pay, a greater cost, and it just more aligns the cost of the service to the user. The third benefit is that you're able to charge properties that are currently tax exempt. Some of the major ones include the provincial building and the hospitals. And as council's aware, we've had the grants in lieu of taxes that we've received in previous years have been cut significantly, and so we don't actually generate any property taxes from those exempt properties. By implementing a utility, you're able to recoup some of the costs of providing those municipal services to those tax-exempt properties. 2 other reasons that you can see down in our the environmental and economic impacts. In terms of the environmental impact, when you have a stormwater utility and stormwater fee, there's an ability for a credit program to be implemented, which would incentivize owners to make changes that could reduce the city's costs in terms of providing stormwater services. So things like having green roofs or slowing the peak flow rates and designing their lots in a way that can retain some of the stormwater. There's a number of various measures that property owners can take in order to reduce that impact and help the city, and those cumulative changes over time will help the city not overbuild its stormwater infrastructure, which means lower costs to taxpayers over time, and as well as the greater environmental benefits. The other one is the economic impact. Often when the city is compared to other jurisdictions, those comparisons don't often take into account the fact that places like Edmonton and St. Albert and Calgary have their stormwater costs paid for by utility, so their municipal taxes look lower than ours, yet they have that funding coming from another source. So by removing that off our tax base, we can reduce our municipal taxes, provides for a more level, fair comparison across municipalities across the province and across the country. And that can be advantageous, as sometimes those lists can impact investment decisions in terms of municipal taxes. So those are the number of the benefits of moving to stormwater utility. There are, apologies. If we were to move to utility, there's about $9.2 million a year that we currently spend on stormwater between our capital, new capital purchases and the operating and maintenance of the utility, of the stormwater system. So by reducing that $9.2 million, taking that off of our tax base, we could reduce municipal tax rates by about 8%, which would reduce your mill rates by about 1 point overall. And then these rates would then be, the dollars would then be generated through the utility. There's a number of different models that can be chosen for how you would charge for the stormwater. So the simplest model is the flat rate. Every parcel in town gets charged the same rate right across the board. This is how Calgary does it. It's Strathcona County, and it's very simple for billing, and not too much discrepancy. However, it doesn't give the ability for any credit programs, and it doesn't actually attribute the cost of providing the service to the different properties, but definitely is the simplest way to go. The next one is a tiered rate, where you would have, based on different classifications, residential, multifamily, commercial, you'd have a different rates for each of those. In places like St. Albert and Spruce Grove do it that way. It's a little bit more accurate, a little bit more, provides the cost of the service to the different categories that actually how it impacts the stormwater system. Then the final model is the impermeable surface model. And this is where it actually, we look at the amount of impervious surface on a lot, and there's a rate applied to how much that impervious surface is. Now, one of the exciting things, if for the impervious model, in the past, we had thought that this would be quite extensive to build and to implement. You would need people going out, measuring impervious areas across the city, or you apply just a general rate. Commercial would be 90% impervious, residential would be 50% impervious, and it provides for quite a bit of room for discrepancy. However, we've been working with our GIS department and being able to utilize some new technology and some new, one of the first examples of artificial intelligence that the city has been able to utilize here. So every 4 years, the city does a flyover of the city where we get the detailed imagery and detailed pictures. One of the things that was done this last time in 2018 was there was a spectral imagery that was done at the same time, which provides different heat signatures for all the different land types, whether it's grass or concrete or asphalt. They all provide different levels. In doing that, our GIS department, in very quick order, within a couple days, was able to apply artificial intelligence to this technology, and we're able to look at impervious areas across the whole city. So you can see on the screen here, move up a little bit. You have the airports over here. And I have a little slider bar, and everything on the left side of the screen here, you see the green. That would be all your pervious areas, all your grass and your soils, and then everything in gray is the impervious areas, so your hard concrete, your asphalt, your roofs, that type of thing. You can see here, I'm going to slide across, and you do this over the whole city. It pulls out all the impervious areas and pervious. You can see there's some empty lots here that I'm moving over now, show all green. And this is done with a very high degree of accuracy. There was a little bit of tweaking needed, but quite simple. You can see going over a commercial area here, Richmond Park. You can kind of see where all the green areas are, see where all the impervious areas. Just give you a quick move over to a residential. And you can see there where it pulls out all the green areas, where you can see all the houses, the roofs, the concrete, and that. So with that, if the impervious area model was to be chosen, the level of work that would be needed is essentially done with this technology. And this is the technology that's been used in a number of the other cities that are implemented the stormwater rate based on the impervious areas. Because it's done within our GIS department, all the parcels, I can instantly pull up any parcel. I can tell you exactly how much impervious area is on there, send it to an Excel spreadsheet. So it's very simple, and it would be very easy to implement. That should council want to go that route. Moving on, there is one of the questions we're asking is a billing system, whether we want to manage this internally or externally. Internally, it would require significant updates to our billing capabilities, as well as some new staffing resources. However, there's the ability to go through an external provider, more than likely Aquaterra, who would be able to provide the billing for us on our behalf. So that's one of the decision points there. With that, we've identified one of the greatest risks here is that depending, on the model chosen, if you choose if one of the simpler models are chosen, there's not going to be as much of a impact to property owners. However, if you went with the impervious, there's going to be discrepancies in how the fees compare to what people are paying for taxes right now. So for properties that are more compact, that have higher assessments, so places like the 214 place and the any of the apartment buildings that have high assessment for a smaller land area, they would be a net benefactor in this system. They would get significant tax savings. However, their stormwater charges wouldn't be that great. Whereas someone with a large, sprawling, paved lot, like a Costco, is going to be paying a much higher stormwater charge, and they may be paying a bit more than they currently are. And so there's going to be some risk with if that were to be implemented, that you will see some of those discrepancies in terms of what people pay now and what they would pay. And with that, I think touches on the high points of the stormwater utility and what would be required to implement it. Certainly open to any questions.
Great, thank you. I do see Councillor Blackburn. Just before I take that question, it's a process question for administration. What's the hope for outcome of this meeting? Is it that committee gives you direction, you'll go bring that to council at a future date? Is it that we recommend to council to give direction, that we do something else? Just what's the process you're hoping to see today?
We're hoping to get answers to some of these questions. First off, does committee want us to further explore and develop this model? And if so, there's a number of questions that to give us clear direction on how that should be developed. The plan is that it would take about 6 months for it to fully develop it with the full billing operations, and that it would go to council, more than likely go to the new council in the fall for a final approval on whether to implement.
Great, thank you. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Councillor Bressie. First an observation and then a question. The observation I have is that when you were looking at the AI that identified impermeable surfaces, and you went over a residential area, it occurs to me that although all of those rooftops are impermeable, they drain into permeable property. And so I wonder whether or not that would be taken into account in the way that, that those properties are built. The question I have, though, is there's mention of the ability for there to be a credit for those properties where they, for instance, retain the rainfall in reservoirs and then reuse the water for things like watering their green spaces and so on. And would it be our intention, if we were to go with this process, to ensure that those credit capabilities were in place before we started?
Through the chair, absolutely. So the framework that we're working with right now and the timeline that we think is quite doable would be that if in the fall council gives the go-ahead, we would likely have a January 1st, 2022 start date in which we would provide notice of assessments to all properties. That would inform them, these are what your charges are going to be, and you have 1 year to apply for credits, to refute the charge, to fully understand the charge, and then it wouldn't be until January 1st, 2023 that the charges would go out. But right at the start, we would have those credit programs available. So if there's certain properties, that have green roofs or that actually have on-site retention right now, that could apply for that. And so before the charge is even, given, we have that, year timeline to implement and to apply a credit to their account.
Sure. Thank you very much. And while I have the floor, Councillor Brescia, I'd just like to comment that if we were to implement this, I would certainly prefer the hybrid choice, which would include tiered and impermeable. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Pressey. This won't be our last chat about the stormwater model, but I think for me, if you're looking for pulse checks today, I'm probably more over Councillor Blackburn. I like the tiered process a bit more. I like the idea of a third party looking after the invoicing of it. I'd love to see us include tax exempt properties. If that was one of your questions as well, I think that's one of the benefits for this. And I guess my only question for you today, Mr. Tarrant, is just more, can you let us know, and I think this is going to be an important part about the education process of it, is what other communities in Alberta that are mid-sized cities or larger cities are already doing this? And I think that's, there's going to be a lot of education around this, but I think it's one of those things I want to have people understand. There's a fair amount of municipalities in Alberta that are already doing this, if I'm understanding correctly. So is that something that we could present in the next report? I know we've had that in other reports, but is that something that could be presented in another report?
Through the chair, certainly that's something that could be provided. And just for your knowledge right now, the municipalities in the province that do have a stormwater utility are Calgary, Edmonton, St. Albert, Strathcona County, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain.
Okay. Well, that's great. And I guess for me, the educational piece will come around that of having people realize their taxes may go down 7 or 8%, but in essence, their utility bills are going to go up to offset that. So it's not an overall change in their expenses, but to your point, I think it is a great thing from an economic development piece to really reset getting our taxes in line with some of these other communities, because we get compared to them. So it's nice to compare apples to apples for sure. So appreciate the report.
Are there any other questions or comments? I guess for me, in terms of the pulse check, I really appreciate the work that's going into this. I think it's the smart way to go. I think that it's got all kinds of benefits, including good capital planning, good for the environment, and it's also just a more just way. I do favor charging people for the services they actually consume more than charging them for taxes when that's practical. And I think this is a great example of doing that. I really like Councillor Plott and Blackburn. I favor the combination. I think it makes sense for those large commercial properties to give them either credit or give them a higher cost, give them credit if they're doing the right thing, and give them a higher cost if they are consuming more stormwater due to a lot of impermeable surface. But I don't think it's worth nickel and diming on a residential property where you're probably just talking about $1 or $2 a month difference. So I really like the combination myself. If there's a third party that can provide buildings so that we don't have to staff up in the city, that's something that I think makes a lot of sense. I probably would favor a phased-in approach, or maybe there's a potential to do a tiered model with that too, where residentials can be impacted right away. But those commercial properties, that there are some that are going to have very significant increased costs for this, and I think it's fair to not just give them that year warning, but also phase it in after that, so that they can take time to work this to their budgets, work that into their leases, etc. And so, yeah, in terms of mitigate the impact of properties that are currently tax exempt, for me, a big motivation of this is I would like us to get funding from provincial properties that serve the entire region, such as the hospital, such as the provincial buildings, such as GPRC. This is an area where about 9% of our taxes are going towards this service of stormwater, and that's a very significant subsidy that the residents of Grande Prairie are giving to people throughout our region. That being said, I am concerned about the impact this would have on schools, which are facing facing budget hits, and also mostly do just serve city residents. And so for me, I would love to see, is there a potential to begin this program to offer, maybe there's a grant program for schools where we can have a temporary time-limited grant where they can create wet gardens or retention areas that could also maybe have some educational uses as well and limit their bills. I'd love us to talk about how can we mitigate the impact of this on schools, but those other tax-exempt properties, absolutely, where we're subsidizing the region, we absolutely should be charging for the service of stormwater they consume. So that's kind of where I'm at on all these questions. Councillor Minhas.
Yeah, I like that, Ellen, what you said. I like the combinations, but on that, what you added in the school, maybe can subsidize school feature to save that cost. Otherwise, we think the residential paying way too much taxes the way it is right now. And I really like the change. I'm very pleased the report they send it to us now that we can work on it, and it'll be good for the future for next. And then we get a level of the taxes, residential compared with the rest of the province. Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments or pulse checks? So I'm trying to figure out what kind of motion might be appropriate for this. And then, I see Director Glavin popping on.
Chair Bressie, I think kind of the general direction that we'd be looking for is that, so we offered a number of questions up for discussion today and looking for some direction. So I think if committee could give us directions on the things that you're comfortable with today. So, what we've heard so far is yes to the development of the utility. To me, I've heard tiered impermeable sounds like the general direction on what model we would choose, an external billing provider. So those things sound like committee's comfortable with giving us direction on those. If committee were not yet in a position to want to give us direction on the remaining ones, you could direct us to bring back recommendations on what to do with the other ones when we bring back the full model later this year. But we'd be looking for some firm direction, as much firm direction as we could today would be what we would appreciate.
Right, and then I'm also wondering if anybody has an opinion where I wonder if this should be recommend to council to give this direction. Just there's 3 of us that are voting here, and I think there's some very significant work here. And it doesn't sound like there's a lot of disagreement here, but I would hate to see this get to council. I'd hate to see a lot of work be done over the next 4 or 5 months, and all of a sudden realize, committee was comfortable with this, but council isn't. So that's just something as we're thinking about motions that might be worth considering too. Mayor Clayton.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Bressie. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that intent. I know that we have had some discussion on this, and continued discussion today, but this is significant and also in setting up the next council with some significant discussions and decisions to be made. So I think this needs to be a full council consideration, not just committee.
So just thinking of a potential motion somebody could make, I'm wondering if a motion such as something like committee recommend that council direct administration to develop stormwater utility model based on a tiered impermeable building method and bring to council for final approval, like something like that. That's getting wordy, but throwing out an idea of what a motion could look like. Councillor Blackburn.
Another suggestion I would have is that we direct administration to report to council with information regarding the discussions that we've had today, to provide council with the opportunity to endorse a position.
Interesting. So, if I'm understanding you right, basically asking administration, hey, take this conversation, come to an upcoming council meeting, and give us a motion at that council meeting that will work for you. Is that kind of what you're suggesting, Councillor Blackburn?
Yeah, basically, I'm suggesting that the items that we thought were good ideas today should be reported to council through a refreshed report to council from administration.
Yeah, and if I'm understanding you right, you're not asking if you made a motion like that and it passed, you wouldn't be asking administration to bring back substantially new information or bring back much different than what the report they gave to us. You'd just be asking them to come back and say, here's what we think we heard from committee.
Yeah.
I think that might be a good way to go. Would you be willing to make a motion to that effect?
I would. Do you need me to word it again?
Yeah, that probably would be good.
Okay, I'll give this a try. I would move that committee direct administration to provide a report to council reflecting the discussions held at committee regarding answers to the essential questions for the purpose of allowing council to make a decision regarding a stormwater utility.
Thank you. Just before I open it up to others, just looking at Councillors Mr. Tarrant and Mr. Glavin, is that a motion that is clear to you what we'd be asking for if that passed?
Thanks, Chair Bressie. There's still a couple items here that I'm not sure we've had a lot of discussion on with the request for direction today, being the immediate or phased-in approach to full cost recovery, or we did have a little bit of a discussion on tax-exempt properties, specifically, the provincial ones versus school properties, versus churches, versus anything else that might fall into the tax-exempt property. Does committee have anything on that you would like us to bring more information on, or, that's still a little gray for me?
Sure, and I think that it's good to have that conversation. I don't think that necessarily means the wording of the motion needs to be changed if I'm understanding the motion right, but I think that, yeah, more conversation of that would potentially help. Mayor Clayton.
Thanks. I'm just curious, maybe a question for Director Glavin. Do you feel that you have enough input at the committee level to bring back a report for council? Should there be another workshop followed up with this to have further discussion with all of council? I get a feeling from the people that have commented that a hybrid model is preferred, and then there's some discussion about tax exempt properties, but it's pretty loose still in my opinion, and I do believe it leaves administration set up bringing back with a lot of speculation. I'm wondering, is there what the timeline looks for this? Is there time to have another council workshop? Is that appropriate? you know, there's 5 significant questions there, and unless we go around committee and vote on them individually, you're not really getting a true representation of what committee thinks, and then you still have to go to council. So I don't know if you have enough from what you've reported here today, and maybe you can tell us if, you know, specifically if you feel you do have enough or if there's much further discussion needed.
Thanks, Chair Clayton.
Director Glavin and then Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, so what we've heard today, I'm comfortable with, you know, the committee members and the councillors that are here today, that there seems to be fairly good support for the tiered model and impervious, that kind of hybrid. As well as, you know, there seems to be no opposition to moving towards an external billing provider. That seems relatively clear. As far as municipal taxes being reduced by a fixed percentage, essentially that question is, if we're reducing taxes, should we ensure that we reduce residential taxes by X amount, and we also then recover costs from the stormwater charge for that same amount, so that every tax class is treated the same, so that we're not, you know, making more winners than losers or anything like that. And then the follow-up to the phased approach, that's basically, do we want to have the general tax base continue to support the stormwater system for a couple of years as we implement the fees? Or do we want to just transition immediately to a system where we reduce property taxes by the full amount of the storm system and we charge the full amount to the utility? And then, you know, the last one, just going around the tax exempt properties, as was pointed out, we aren't getting the grants in lieu from the province that we used to. And this would allow us to start recovering some of the costs of servicing those regional entities that the whole region benefits from, yet we are on the hook for paying. So for us, the most beneficial thing would be to have that direction. If committee isn't yet comfortable making that direction and wants us to kind of summarize this conversation, as Councillor Blackburn has suggested, that's something that we can do, and it really wouldn't take a lot of work. Like the report probably wouldn't change a whole lot from now until when we brought it to council, so it could come relatively quickly to council. The question that we would have is if there's something significantly missing here from council's knowledge base on this that you would need in order to make a decision, that would be something useful to know for us to bring that to that council meeting. Or that's something that at that council meeting you could direct us to bring back further information. We don't have to nail this down in one meeting. This is a large, complex process that you know, really needs as much time as it needs. So if we need to do a little bit more work on it, that will happen.
Thank you. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you. I kind of like Mayor Clayton's idea better than my own regarding having the information come back to council through a workshop. There are a lot of various components to this proposal, and some of the stuff we haven't really had to wrestle through and make clear in our minds. So if it would be all right, I would change my motion to recommend that or direct administration to bring the information that they've learned from committee to a workshop session where council can explore the options further.
Great. So just you're withdrawing your previous motion and make a new motion.
That's right.
And I'm certainly okay with that if there's no objections from committee. Councillor Clayton?
Thank you, Chair Bressie. Yeah, the big thing for me is the discussion around question number 3 and 4. I want council, and through a workshop format, I think it's best to talk about those. When Director Glavin mentioned other information, I think it's important for us to look at commercial property A and residential property A and examples of all and what they currently pay in tax, what they're going to pay after. If we were going to do a phased-in approach, what this would look like. Those are all great ideas, but without me seeing numbers, I just, it's too hard for me to make a decision on the tax implications on somebody without seeing the hard dollars of what that looks like. And what's a phased-in approach look like? Is it, if somebody doesn't want to phase it in because they're prepared to pay it early because it's affordable to them, because of the implications on their taxes are significant enough. You know what I mean? So there's enough numbers there. I need to see some more numbers on examples of commercial and residential properties specifically.
Great. Councillor O'Toole, I definitely see it. Just so that I could, just before I, oh, okay, go ahead, Councillor O'Toole.
No, I'm going home.
Okay. Well, thank you. Wish you a good day. Just so something I'm confused by is in terms of a workshop, what do we mean by that? Is that a in-camera meeting we're hoping to have? Is it more of a committee of the whole style setting? Just what's the hope? What's the intention with the workshop?
Are you asking me that question?
Yeah, I guess so.
I saw, after I made my suggestion, I saw Director Glavin raise his hand. I wonder if you had a comment on that before I do.
Sure, Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. My question is actually in the same vein as yours. It's just kind of what we wanted to get out of and what form we wanted to do it.
Okay, so it did occur to me that some of this discussion has been happening in public view as it should. And I know that the concept of a workshop is not something that the public gets to observe and be a part of. However, I think that there are enough complex things for us to consider and toss around that a workshop would be appropriate before taking any new additional thoughts to a committee meeting or indeed to council. So I still recommend that it would work as a workshop first.
Okay. So then, just for sure we're all clear on what motion is on the table right now. I think the motion would be to the effect of committee direct administration set up a workshop on storm utility model with all of council. Would that be the motion that's on the table right now, Councillor Blackburn?
Yeah, that's close enough. Yeah.
Cool. Don't know if I'll support it, but definitely okay with that. Old motion being withdrawn, that being the motion that's on the table right now. Councillor Clayton.
Yeah, I guess, Chair Bressie, just curious, could the motion just be to receive this report for information and further bring back the conversation to the next strategic priority working group meeting?
Yeah, and I think that both those might have the same effect, but Councillor Blackburn, do you have a thought on that?
Well, that could work, whether it's a workshop or strategic priorities. We're talking about the same types of outcomes.
Yeah, I guess my only comment being is that publicly people understand our process right now, of what we're doing at Strategic Priority Working Group. It's not uncommon for all of a sudden, but it would be weird for all of a sudden this now is a public conversation and now we're going to have a workshop on it. It seems like we're pulling it back to have a private conversation, whereas our Strategic Priority Working Group is already an existing format that, you know, the public is used to the fact that we go there and discuss specific items. So that was my only thought.
Sure. I would amend my motion to reflect that.
Okay, so maybe before we continue, I just want to check in with our recording secretary if our recording secretary has a clear motion and understands what committee is discussing right now.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. I have committee received this for information and direct administration to bring this discussion to a council strategic priorities working group.
Great. Thank you. I think for me, this should come to a committee of the whole, in my opinion. I think that I'm completely fine having more robust conversation about it, but I think I've seen the information that I need to get to bring this in a public forum. I don't really know what information we're hoping for to get in a workshop that hasn't already been presented through a strategic priorities working group. And for me, I think it's time for this to be a public conversation. And so I don't think I can support this. I can support this motion, although I certainly would support a motion to send this to a committee of the whole. Councillor Blackburn.
Shall I comment now, or would you like me to close?
Yeah, maybe I'll ask you to close. Is there anybody else that has a comment? Well, in that case, Councillor Blackburn, why don't you close for us?
Thank you. I think that the public must understand that there are times when we toss around a lot of what ifs when we're in a workshop setting or in a strategic priority working group session. The kinds of things that may or may not happen and may or may not be picked up out of context by members of the public or the media. And I think that there are enough things that we're dealing with here that that we're not clear on, or that where we might toss around the consequences of a variety of different suggestions, that it would be in the public's best interest for us to kick that around in private first, and then once a more appropriate proposal can be made to council, then we would have the opportunity to debate and make decisions in a public meeting. So I'm hoping that people will support this motion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And that was our close, so I will call the question. All in favor? And all opposed? That's 2 in favor, 1 opposed, so that motion carries. And is there any further business we need to do on this? Great. In that case, thank you, Mr. Trod. We appreciate your work. And then that brings us to our bylaw and policy review, item 3.1, and Ms. Needham, that's you on the hook again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee. The bylaws being brought forward today are C-1078G, Use of Public Lands Bylaw, and C-504C, the Boulevard Bylaw. The recommendations are in the report. I just want to speak briefly as to how we got to where we are today. It's been a long road. I think the first email I got from Ms. Karbashowski on this was February 12th of last year. So I do apologize for how long it's taken to get to this point. The bylaw C-504 was handed to me for review by the now disbanded Policy and Bylaw Review Committee. And part of the reason why it's taken quite a while to get here is that it was discovered upon review that this affected quite a few departments within the city. And so I have asked the people that I worked with from engineering, Christine Donnelly, and from Enforcement Services, Ross Gear, to attend this meeting as well to answer questions pertaining to their areas of the bylaw. And I'm not going to go in depth, and everyone has the report, so I would like to open to questions if anyone does have any questions on the bylaw review.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? One I've got is maybe it's probably for Mr. Gear. It's in terms of enforcement of encampments. I know my understanding of our current practice, the encampment is discovered, isn't just to go and just toss it out right away, but to give some sort of written notice if somebody's not there and post it there so that the person doesn't come back and just see an empty campsite. Hopefully they come back and see, hey, this is going to be tossed in the near future. Am I understanding our current practice correctly, and would this change that practice?
Through the chair, Chair Bressie, no, it won't change our current practice. That is what's being done right now. What these amendments do, they give us tools to deal with people that are problematic rather than most of the people. Most people, even our homeless population, we go out and we'll deal with them. Some of these people we deal with many times before we move to any sort of enforcement, and that's the common practice. However, when we do have to deal with an encampment, right now, the tools really aren't there. This will give us the tools we need. So no, the practice hasn't changed.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Mr. Gear, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. Just one very minor change, perhaps, and I apologize for this change being at the 11th hour. As Amy stated, many different people worked on this, and it's very minor. Excuse me. Just under the definitions, it reads right now, it reads direction. And I quote, direction means a written direction given pursuant to section 7. And I would ask that be changed to direction means a written or verbal direction given pursuant to section 7. It's a minor change, but it's fairly significant one. And subject to that, to any questions you might have, that's all I have to say.
Great. Are there any other questions the committee has? So maybe a appropriate motion would be recommend council pass these with the amendment to bylaw C1078G as recommended, where perhaps that amendment should get put into whatever motion might come out of this. If anybody's willing to make a motion. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you. I would move a motion as recommended. The recommendation does not refer the bylaw to council, and I think that that's what we would have to do. But so I would make a motion that committee recommend council give the 3 readings to bylaw C1078G. Now, how did you say that? With the proposed amendment to the definition?
Yeah, or something like with the amendment recommended by administration, something like that.
Sure. I'll go with that. And then and I guess my motion would apply to all 3 recommendations that are given here, just with the preface that that it be committee recommending council take these actions.
Great. Ms. Van Beekveld, I just wanted to check, do you have a clear motion?
Yes. Did you want me to read it out for you?
No, I think we know what we're talking about. If you feel comfortable too, then I'm fine without being read.
Thank you.
I think for me, I certainly support this motion going to council. It's something that I do have some hesitancy around approving at council. I really do understand the need for more tools to deal with encampments. And maybe it's something that it's uncomfortable that I just need to embrace, and practically it's needed. But I think the 2 things that are really concerning me are somebody's got an encampment. All right, I get why we're outlawing that. At the same time, I hate the idea of somebody getting a ticket for staying warm, although I really understand why we don't want them staying warm in the ways they're staying right now, and the danger that poses not just them, but to our city staff and to our firefighters and to members of the public too. So I understand it. Also, I understand the need of a tool fines as a tool for enforcement, but I do get concerned about you find somebody who's street involved, and it probably doesn't really impact them now because there's no real mechanism to make them pay that. It sure can impact them if they turn their life around and they're getting on their feet. And so I think that I probably will support this when it gets to council, but there is uncomfortableness to this it probably is just the way it needs to be. But I just do want to acknowledge that it's not a comfortable thing to pass. But definitely support this today. Any other discussion or debate? I'll call it to question then. All in favor? And that motion carries. Great, thank you. I appreciate administration's work on this, and that will bring us to Director Glavin for our outstanding items list.
Hey, Chair Bressie, we'll start off with item 1082, which was the Parks Bylaw and Policies. So we've dealt with that today, so that can come off the list. We'll add a date to our item 1132, the Creekside Condo Association. We expect to bring a report back February 2nd. For 1124 accessibility improvement grants, initially we expected to bring that back today. However, there's a key stakeholder group that we hadn't been able to meet with yet, and we didn't want to come back prematurely, so we're going to bring back that report February 16th, as we can't meet with them until later on in January. As well, item 1027, we did deal with that today. However, I imagine we'll be bringing that back, so we'll keep an item of some of that flavor on there. And with that, I think that's all our amendments.
Great, thank you. Can I have a motion to receive as amended? Councillor Blackburn.
So moved.
Great, all in favor? That motion carries unanimously, and with that, I will call our meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a great day. Good to see your faces again.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.